Lucía Rivera should have died that night. The water was black and cold, thick with weeds and moonlight. It wrapped around her ankles like hands. She hadn't meant to get so close. She only wanted to sit by the water. She only wanted to think. The others were laughing somewhere up the hill. Drunk, loud, alive. A summer party on the San Antonio River. One last wild night before senior year. She felt the mud slip beneath her heel, just a little misstep. Just a second, and then the river opened. Her scream never made it out. The current stole it. The cold slapped her lungs shut. She fought, clawed, but the surface rose away. Her vision dimmed. And just as the darkness swallowed her, something pulled her back up. Not a hand, not a friend. Something. She coughed water until her chest burned. Her jeans were soaked, her hair tangled with river reeds. She sat on the bank alone, shaking, staring into that black current. No one else saw, no one else noticed. It was like she disappeared and came back wrong. That night, Lucía began to dream of a woman in white, standing at the river's edge, crying, her hair wet and heavy, her face always hidden. "Hey, Miss Hijos," the woman would cry. She asked her abuela about the dreams. Her grandmother crossed herself and whispered, "You saw her. She marked you." Lucía laughed. But after that night, mirrors fogged when she passed. Water taps dripped even when off. Dogs wouldn't come near her. And every night, somewhere just outside her window, she heard weeping. Her parents told her it was stress, trauma, maybe guilt from the party, maybe PTSD from almost drowning. They sent her to a therapist. But when she talked about the woman by the river, the crying, the footsteps that weren't hers, the counselor said, "Would you like to try medication?" That fall, her mother applied for a Catholic international exchange program. Cultural immersion, time away, a way to reset. Her application was accepted immediately. Destination, Eastern Poland. A village outside the Baba Yaga forest. Old world, cold rivers. Quiet people, peace. Lucía wasn't afraid. She should have been. The flight was long. Her host family was polite formal. Their home was modest, tucked against the forest line. A stone chapel sat a mile away. A river coiled through the woods like a sleeping snake. The house had no mirrors. When she asked why, her host grandmother simply said, "Some things don't need to see themselves." The first night, she unpacked her things, set her phone on the nightstand, brushed her teeth, opened the window for air. From the woods, something cracked. From the river, something cried. She looked out and saw nothing, just mist rising from both tree and water. But the next morning, her bedroom floor was damp. Her shoes were soaked, and there was a wet handprint on her window pane facing in. That was the first night in Potosí. The first night the forest watched her. The first night La Llorona found her again. But this time, something else found her too. Not a ghost, not a spirit, something old, something bone deep, something that lives where trees listen and bones whisper. It had watched La Llorona cry, and it did not like uninvited spirits crossing into its woods. From deep in the forest, Baba Yaga stirred, and Lucía had no idea she was already claimed. Lucía didn't sleep much her first week in Potosí. The village was small, maybe 30 homes, one church, one post office, and a river that shimmered like steel beneath the overcast sky. The forest pressed against everything like it had never left. Her host family didn't speak much English. The parents worked during the day. The son, Maxim, was 8. He drew birds with black eyes and trees that bent the wrong way. The grandmother, Babcia Arena, didn't speak at all. But she watched Lucía, constantly. Lucía thought it was just culture shock. The silence. The way doors creaked even when shut. The way the old woman placed bowls of salt on every windowsill. On the third day, Lucía decided to go for a walk, just to think. The forest trail started right behind the house. The trees stood tall and gray, their trunks mottled with lichen. No birds sang, no wind blew. Just the sound of leaves cracking like old bones under her boots. She reached the edge of the river and sat, the sun melting behind thick clouds. And then she heard it. "I got a Miss Hijos." The same voice from Texas, the same cry that filled her dreams. La Llorona was here. But how? This was another continent, another world. She stood, heart racing, and turned toward the woods. That's when she felt it. Not just eyes, judgment. The trees shifted, not with wind, but with intention. A shape in the fog. Not tall, not short, not quite walking. A hut with legs. Chicken legs, turning, watching. And then it vanished. She ran back, breath frozen in her chest. When she reached the house, Babcia Arena was waiting on the porch. The old woman said nothing, just held out her hand. Lucía hesitated. Then the woman whispered, "The river mourns, the forest judges. You've been touched by both." That night, Lucía couldn't sleep. At 2:13 in the morning, she heard a knock at her window. Not gentle, wet, tap, 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 tap. She rose and pulled back the curtain. Nothing. Just a fog-drenched pane in the shadow of the trees. But when she stepped away, her floor was soaked again. She checked the lock and noticed something etched in the glass, a single feather, burnt into the frost. The next day, Maxim refused to sit near her. He pointed at her with a crayon and said something in Polish that made the room go cold. Lucía looked to her host's father. He translated. He says you smell like bones and crying. Lucía laughed, awkward, shaky, but no one else did. That afternoon, Babcia Irena gave her a small pouch filled with crushed bones and herbs. Lucía asked what it was. The old woman answered, to confuse the one in the woods, not the one in the water. That night, the weeping started earlier. 10:17 p.m. while Llorona stood across the river, her white gown rippling even though the air was still, her hair floating as if she never left the water. She didn't move, didn't speak, just cried, and Lucía couldn't look away. She reached for the window. Her fingers touched the glass, and then a branch snapped behind her. She spun. At the edge of her room, where shadow met light, something moved, just for a moment. A woman's silhouette, bent, crooked, with glowing eyes like burning amber. Then it was gone. Lucía screamed. The lights flickered. The house groaned like it was alive. When her host family burst in, she tried to explain, but there was no figure, no sign of the crying woman, just a single feather on her pillow, and footprints made of mud and ash. The grandmother whispered to her daughter in Polish. Lucía caught two words, woda, las, water, forest, two spirits, two realms. Both knew her now. And somewhere deep in the woods, Baba Yaga leaned from her hut, her long fingers stirring a pot of old teeth and salt. And on the surface of the soup, La Llorona's face floated. The crone hissed, "You don't belong here, ghost." But the girl, she will. Lucy stopped sleeping after the third night. It wasn't fear, not at first. It was something deeper, a pressure, a presence. Like the house was holding its breath, waiting for something to crawl in. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw water. Not calm and still, but black, boiling, rising to her chin. Then her mouth. Then a woman in white, weeping, holding her by the shoulders, pulling her down. Then she'd wake gasping. At first she blamed the jet lag. Then the air, then the strange food or the stories. But deep down she knew the woman followed her here. Not just the weeping, not just the dreams, the same wet footsteps, the same handprint on glass, the same cold breath on the back of her neck. La Llorona had not stayed behind. She had crossed the world for her. That night, the weeping began at 9:32 p.m. early. Closer. Lucía lit a candle and whispered the old Spanish prayer her abuela taught her half-remembered. The flame flickered once, then died. She walked to the window. The crying grew louder. La Llorona stood not across the river, but in the backyard. Her hair trailed behind her like seaweed. Her gown soaked to the knees. Her head low, as if mourning, but her eyes stared straight at Lucía. And for the first time, she spoke. "You were mine. Come home." Lucía stepped back. A pressure swelled in her ears. The weeping grew sharper, rising like a storm tide. Then something broke the moment, a shriek from the trees. Birds burst upward like ash from a fire. The air changed, thick, sharp, wild. From the forest's edge, a figure moved. A shadow taller than any tree. A hut, walking. One step, two, turning, watching. And behind it, a shape hunched forward. Long arms, pale face. Baba Yaga had come. The crying stopped. La Llorona vanished, melted into mist, dragged back by unseen force. Lucía collapsed to the floor. Her ears rang. Her pillow was soaked. And her door was open, though she had locked it. The next morning, her reflection blinked after she did. Lucía confronted her host family. "Something's following me." Someone, a woman in white, a hut, a shadow. The parents avoided her eyes, but Babcia Irena, she listened, then spoke. "You drowned, but came back. That's how she found you." "I didn't drown." Lucía froze. The old woman shook her head. "Your soul left. Even if only for seconds. And that place between breath and water is hers." Lucía whispered, "Who's the other one? The one in the forest?" The old woman didn't answer. She only handed Lucía a silver spoon with a cracked handle and said, "If you hear footsteps in the trees, don't eat anything." That night, Lucía tried to sleep with the lights on. It didn't help. Because the lights flickered, the bulbs burst. And when the darkness settled, both spirits were there. One weeping in the corner, one crouching at the ceiling. La Llorona stretched her hand toward Lucía's bed. Baba Yaga grinned, teeth like rusted blades. And the air itself bent under their stare. But as La Llorona stepped forward, Baba Yaga hissed. "Not yours yet, river rat," she breathes. "She's mined away." La Llorona shrieked a sound like a church bell cracking underwater. The walls bled condensation. Lucia screamed. The two entities lunged at each other, one in a flood of black water, the other in a storm of claws and crows, and in the center, Lucia fainted. She woke at dawn, on the floor, unharmed, but the windows were shattered, her mirror cracked, and beside her, a human tooth wrapped in a single strand of black wet hair. They were no longer just haunting her, they were fighting over her, and she didn't know which was worse, the spirit who mourned, or the witch who judged. On the 7th night, Lucia stopped praying, not because she didn't believe, but because she wasn't sure who was listening anymore. Every candle flickered the wrong way. Every prayer echoed, and the rosary beads beneath her pillow burned her skin. The morning after she fainted, Lucia found more than broken mirrors and tooth offerings. She found a trail, leading from her room to the river, bare feet, waterlogged, small, as if she'd walked it herself. But she hadn't, not willingly. Llorona finally spoke the truth. The woman in the water, La Llorona, the crone in the woods. Baba Yaga, one mourns, the other judges, neither forgives. And the cursed one saw you, and both want Lucia. You drowned, Nina, the old woman whispered, even if just for a second. You went where you shouldn't, Lucia asked La Llorona. The old woman shook her head slowly. God cursed her. She can only take what walks near water in the dark. You did that. She marked you. And Baba Yaga? She doesn't like uninvited spirits in her woods. So now she wants the spirit and you. That night, the hauntings bled together. Lucia couldn't tell what was dream and what wasn't. The river whispered through her walls. Shadows crawled backward on the ceiling. A child's voice whispered her name from under the floorboards. Lucia, Lucia, come back. At 1:44 a.m., the house went still. Not quiet, still, no sound, no air, no heartbeat. Lucia rose from bed without knowing why. She walked to the window and saw her again. La Llorona standing ankle-deep in the backyard pond, crying into her hands. Lucia didn't move, she didn't scream, she just stared, until the ground shook. From the forest's edge, the trees parted, slowly, creaking, cracking, like old bones bending, and then it stepped out, the hut, grinning, eyes glowing yellow-white, Baba Yaga's hut. Tall as a house, legs like rotting chicken bones, covered in moss and feathers. It turned toward the crying ghost like it could see her. And from its door she emerged, bent, Baba Yaga. The air snapped like static. Lucia felt her skin sting, her ears pop, her vision blur. In the backyard, the two spirits stared at each other, one sobbing silently, the other baring teeth like blades. Then Baba Yaga raised a finger and pointed not at Lucia, but at La Llorona. You are not of this land, she rasped. You are not even of this world. You stink of heaven's punishment. And I do not suffer curses I didn't cast. La Llorona said nothing, her hair, her eyes, she simply wept, until the water beneath her feet rose into her dress. She screamed not at Baba Yaga, but at God, and the river answered. A wave of water surged forward, aimed straight at the hut. Baba Yaga lifted her hand, and the trees tore themselves from the ground, forming a wall of roots and bones. Water and wood collided. Lightning cracked. Birds fell dead from the sky. Lucia fell to the floor screaming, sobbing, watching the world rip open between her window panes. Then it stopped. Smoke rose from the earth. The hut went backward. Baba Yaga's arm was burned black, but she was alive. La Llorona vanished again into fog, into earth, into guilt. Lucia lay on the floor, unable to move. Water filled her lungs, but she wasn't drowning, and on the floor next to her, a mirror, unbroken, but warped. Her reflection inside it was crying. The next day, her host father asked why her bedsheets were full of leaves. She said nothing. Baksha Irena brought her a bowl of river stones and said only, "You're still between them," and somewhere deep in the woods, Baba Yaga sharpened her teeth and whispered to the dark, "If I cannot eat the spirit, I will take what it wants." And at the river's edge, La Llorona wept, but her weeping now had a rhythm, a pattern, a name, Lucia. Lucia, Lucia. Lucia stopped asking for help. No one in Pottlesey would speak of what they saw. The broken trees were blamed on wind, the dead birds on sickness, the blackened grass outside the house on frost. But everyone stopped making eye contact, even the priest. Especially the priest. Lucia started sleeping during the day. The nights belonged to something else now, to sobs and creaks, and the grinding sound of ancient legs dragging through soil. She felt like a puppet held between two fraying threads, one soaked in water, the other carved from bone. The river called to her, but the woods reached for her. She didn't know which would come first. She only knew this: she was being hunted, and not by accident. On the morning of the 8th day, she visited the church. It was old, centuries old. Candles melted into the pews. Every crucifix was cracked but not broken. The altar cloth was stained, not with wine. The priest avoided her eyes until she asked, "Why can't the forest kill the woman in white?" He went silent, then whispered a single line from scripture, "He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved." But she who drowned her children, his hands trembled. That spirit is cursed by God. Her punishment is eternal. No demon, no witch, no pagan can undo what heaven decreed. Lucía asked, "What if someone tries?" The priest laughed. It was hollow. Then she'll scream, and heaven will hold her tighter. Even Baba Yaga, that name made him flinch, especially her. She rules the land, the rot, the dark, but she does not rule judgment. Then why is she after me? Because she can't stand losing. And you are her bait now. That night, Lucía dreamed of fire. Baba Yaga stood above the river, hurling bones into the water. La Llorona rose from below drenched, gasping, cursing without words. They clashed again. Trees screamed, the ground split, and Lucía stood between them, hair soaked, arms cut, heart beating like a drum. She woke with bruises on her arms shaped like fingers, long, thin, wet, and on her nightstand one feather, one wet braid of black hair, and a page torn from a Bible, just one verse circled in red. "Vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord." She asked Babcia Arena what it meant. The old woman nodded once, her eyes dark. La Llorona cannot be destroyed, only seen. And sometimes reflected. Lucía asked, "In what?" "In herself." "A mirror?" The old woman nodded again. But only when she believes the face she sees is still hers. That night, Lucía cleaned the cracked mirror beside her bed. She lit 2 candles. She placed a bowl of river water beneath it, and she whispered the name, La Llorona. The candle flickered blue. Behind her, the floor creaked, slowly, like someone wet and barefoot had just stepped inside. Lucía didn't turn. She stared into the mirror. In its surface, behind her reflection, stood a woman, pale, shaking, hair over her face, gown dripping. Lucía whispered, "I'm not your child." The woman in the mirror didn't speak, but her head tilted slightly, as if remembering. Then the mirror cracked again, and the reflection vanished. But something else took its place. Eyes, yellow, smiling, sharp. Baba Yaga. Her voice scraped through the room, like rust on stone. "You think you can trap a spirit that God already owns? Let me judge her for you." Lucy grabbed the mirror. The candle went out. The room went black. Outside, the trees shook violently. The wind shrieked, not as a howl, but as laughter. Baba Yaga was coming, and La Llorona was already inside. There would be no sleep tonight, and far beyond the trees, far beneath the river, something deeper stirred. Not death, judgment. The 11th night arrived without stars. The sky above Potosi turned to ash. The wind blew wrong, not across the forest, but out of it, and the river swelled, though no rain had fallen. Lucía stood at the edge of both worlds, 1 foot in the mud, 1 foot on pine needles, between forest and flood, between curse and judgment. She didn't plan it that way, but they did. The old path that led from the churchyard to the river's bend had always been quiet, until that night, until the birds stopped singing, until the insects stopped buzzing, until the forest held its breath. She carried 3 things: a cracked mirror, bound in black cloth, a pouch of salt and bone, given by Babcia Arena, and a single iron nail, gripped so tightly her palm bled. She didn't know which spirit would come first. She only knew they both would, and soon. She reached the hollow, an old clearing, where the trees bowed inward like they'd once watched something ancient crawl through. In the center, a stump, burned, split, shaped like a throne made for no one. Lucía placed the mirror on it, poured salt in a wide ring, dug the iron nail into the soil. Then she knelt and whispered, "Come for me." The wind screamed, and the river answered. La Llorona emerged first. Her gown dragged behind her like a burial shroud soaked in grief. Her hair floated unnaturally, like it was still underwater. Her face was almost human. Almost. Her hands reached toward Lucía, palms up, trembling. "You called me Hija." Lucía shook her head. "I'm not yours." La Llorona wept harder, and the water at her feet rose with her sorrow. Then came the creaking, like old wood straining beneath a grave. The trees parted violently, the crows scattered like shadows, and the ground shook beneath her boots. Baba Yaga's hut stomped into view. It twisted, dancing on those skeletal chicken legs, stepping just outside the salt ring. Its door flew open and out stepped the witch, crooked, massive, alive with hunger. She pointed a jagged finger at La Llorona and shrieked, "I warned you. Spirit or not, this soul is not yours to take." La Llorona lifted her face slowly. Her eyes were pale white, not blind but ancient. And then she spoke a single word, cursed. The wind howled, the river rose, and the fireflies turned red. The clash began. Baba Yaga raised her staff carved from bone and bark, and the forest obeyed. Trees reached out, roots twisted from below. The earth itself tried to swallow La Llorona, but the ghost dissolved, turned to water, rose like mist, reformed behind the crone, and screamed. A scream that shattered branches. A scream that made the salt boil. A scream full of a mother's eternal punishment. Baba Yaga shrieked back, hurling her staff into the mud. Lightning struck it. Fire erupted, burning a circle between them. Lucía could only cover her ears and pray, but no god answered, only the cursed. And the crone. Water surged, roots cracked. The hut stomped and screamed. The river surged and hissed. Two ancient forces, neither living, neither dead, battling for one girl. Lucía tried to run, the salt line split beneath her. The mirror rattled. La Llorona reached for her, but Baba Yaga threw a crow, black as pitch, into the ghost's face. Feathers exploded. The crow evaporated into flame, but the distraction worked. Baba Yaga reached for Lucía. Her hand touched her arm. Lucía screamed as her skin blistered, not from heat, but from truth. The witch was judgment, and Lucía had been touched by death. La Llorona bellowed. Her form surged forward like a flood. She didn't speak. She didn't beg. She commanded. And Baba Yaga stepped back, hissing, smoldering, melting. The witch could not hold what had been cursed by God. She turned to Lucía, furious. "This is not over." Then she vanished into the forest, her hut stomping behind her, vanishing into fog. La Llorona knelt beside Lucía now. Her weeping softened. Her hands reached forward. Her voice cracked. "Please, hija. I only want you to be safe, to come with me." Lucía, through tears, pulled the mirror from the stump. She held it to the spirit's face. For the first time, La Llorona looked at herself and screamed. A scream not of grief, but of recognition, of what she had become. Her body burst into mist. The river went still. The candles snuffed. And Lucía fell to her knees, coughing, crying, alive, but not alone. From far within the forest, a cackle echoed. Not angry, not afraid, waiting. Lucía ran her finger across the glass. Her reflection blinked with her, but for the first time, it looked tired. Not frightened, ready. Somewhere deep in the woods, Baba Yaga stirred her cauldron faster. She tossed in feathers, ash, bones of unbaptized infants, but the stew boiled too hot. It refused to bind La Llorona. The curse wouldn't let her be consumed, and worse, the spirit refused to leave. The forest burned with frustration. Birds crashed into windows. Dogs howled at noon. Children dreamed of rivers where none existed, and in every dream, Lucía stood with her back to the water, behind her, weeping, in front of her, teeth. Baba Yaga hissed, "You will scream for me before this ends." But Lucía was done screaming. She stood from her bed, took the mirror, and whispered to the air, "You want me? Both of you? Then meet me where the river meets the trees. Let's finish this." And deep beneath the water, La Llorona wept. And far behind the trees, Baba Yaga smiled. The flame flickered, the mirror glowed. For the first time, La Llorona looked at herself, and she remembered her children, the river, the screams, the judgment. Her face twisted. Her body flickered. She wailed not in anger, but in grief. And the mirror cracked, then shattered into her. La Llorona screamed, loud enough to split the trees, loud enough to make the river recoil. And then she was gone. Not vanished. Vanished. The candle went out. Lucía collapsed. And the forest was still. The war was over. For now, she woke up alone. Covered in ash, the mirror gone, the river low, and the trees whispering something new. Not her name, but something older, watching, smiling, waiting, because in the very last shadow, a shape moved, bent, crooked, laughing softly. Baba Yaga. The forest didn't say goodbye. Lucía woke in the hollow, alone, alive. The mirror was gone. The salt circle dissolved. The river lowered, and her name no longer echoed in the trees. She stood slowly, every joint ached, her palms were cut. Her body was cold, but she was whole. The walk back to the house was silent. No bird screamed, no ghost cried. Even the wind had stopped whispering. The forest had released her. Babsha Irena stood on the porch. She didn't speak, but she nodded once and handed Lucia a small candle unlit. "Keep this," she said, "for the next dark place." That night, Lucia packed. Her exchange was ending early. No one asked why. Her host father gave her a small wooden rosary. Her host brother Maxim drew her a picture. A girl standing between a river and a hut, smiling. Alone, on the plain, she stared out the window the entire time, beneath the clouds, fields, and forests, and rivers that twisted like black veins across the earth. She didn't sleep, not because she was afraid, but because some part of her still listened, for a weeping, for a cackle, for the sound of steps that don't belong. Back home, things felt lighter. Her mother said her eyes looked older. Her father said she was quieter. She no longer feared mirrors, but she no longer kept them in her room. She walked past rivers without looking, and never went near the woods alone. But sometimes, just as she drifts toward sleep, she swears she hears footsteps, slow, careful, as if trying not to wake her. And sometimes, in dreams, she sees feathers in her shoes. She knows what it means. La Llorona is gone, but Baba Yaga waits. Because once you're seen by one, you carry their shadow. But once you've been fought over by both, you are never quite alone again. Lucia lives, she remembers. And she walks forward, but never too close to the river, and never too deep into the trees. So if you ever find yourself between a flood and a forest, if you hear weeping where there should be silence, or laughter where no one stands, leave. Don't look back. Don't speak your name, and whatever you do, never choose between them. If this tale chilled you, if you felt the trees lean too close or the water run too deep, if you whispered her name just to see what would happen, then you're already marked. Like, share, and subscribe before a night falls, because some stories follow those who keep them quiet. Speak the name, pass it on, and stay out of the woods.